Hello and welcome to our session, The Quiet Pursuit of the Extraordinary, Regional Innovation in Tasmania. I want to begin by paying my respects and acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered right here, but also where you are watching this from. And understand and recognise that for well over 65,000 years they have innovated and created on these lands, and we still have so much to learn. My name is Adam. I am the CEO and the Chief Entrepreneur at the Van Diemen Project. And we are so excited to be sharing the stories of Tasmania with you across Spark Festival, wherever you are watching, across Australia and across the world, because we know there is incredible things happening here in our regional communities. And it's not just that Tasmania is doing it well, we're really proud of our state, but we know all across regional Australia, innovation, entrepreneurship, it's taking off in a different way. And with COVID-19, it's made us rethink, where do we live? Where do we have to be able to start new ideas, to create, to be inspired? And lots of people are looking, it may not be a big city anymore. It may be a regional community. It may be a great part of Australia to go and explore. I'm right here in the Cataract Gorge in Launceston. I am standing 2.5 kilometres away from the centre of our city. Why would you not want to be living in regional Australia when you've got opportunities like this around you? Great schools, great healthcare, access to the rest of the country, jumping on a plane when we're allowed to, good quality internet connections, fingers crossed, but we can make it work. That's what innovators and entrepreneurs do. And so what we're going to be running is a panel conversation that's going to be facilitated by my fellow entrepreneurship facilitator, Nicole Lucas, and she's going to share some of the stories and discuss with our innovators how they've made their opportunity matter here in regional Tasmania, how they've been inspired, how they've been encouraged, and why being located in a regional community is not a bad thing to start and scale a brand new idea. But why on earth did we call this the quiet pursuit of the extraordinary? It's a great question to ask, and we're actually going to be joined by the CEO of Brand Tasmania. Todd's going to come through and share what that is all about. So Brand Tasmania, as context, is our state's brand agency, looking at what does it mean to be Tasmanian? What do we call ourselves? What do we unite under? And the Tasmanian brand that he has helped develop and captured the stories around is absolutely exceptional, and I will not do it justice by sharing it. And so I'm so glad that we have Todd joining us now.
Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that I'm standing on traditional Tasmanian Aboriginal land. They've been telling stories of this place, Lutruwita, for thousands of years. When we began our research with Tasmanians, they often used a phrase, clean and green, a phrase they'd heard for 20 or 30 years, and we can understand why. The problem was, so many places use the phrase clean and green, it's difficult to imagine how we can use that to say this is what makes Tasmania absolutely unique and different from everywhere else. The bigger problem just down the road is that New Zealand was using the very same phrase for a long time. They got rid of it, officially anyway, because human beings live in New Zealand. It's really difficult to be perfect all the time. But a bigger problem is it leaves out culture. That is the one thing that people in Tasmania have that no other place has. How can we define that and use it as a strength? The phrase we use as a synonym for place marketing or place branding is unifying cultural expression. The culture is crucial. The unifying is nearly impossible, but that's our mission. The normal product, as we all know, is a new logo or a tagline. 6 figures, 7 figures. They'll give this to you and you'll say, live it, love it. Use this for everything. The problem was when Leeds paid for this, Hong Kong had the very same brand. How could that be? What we tried to do here in Tasmania is figure out from the inside out, using narrative, what is the story that Tasmanians tell? And so we looked at a random sample of Tasmanians, we spoke to them, 200, then 200 more, and then 50 more in the end. 450 interviews, all told, to try to figure out one-on-one, in hour-long conversations, what is it about this place? What can only happen here? What would break your heart if you had to leave? And the story Tasmanians told about the place and about their own lives often began with adversity and hardship in an isolated place, or even regret and shame over the way we've treated each other previously. A lot of people here in the north and the northwest of the state talked about how the economy shifted from commodities into something else, when labor became cheaper elsewhere, so many of these commodity or processing or manufacturing jobs crumbled and crashed. And psychologically, this had a huge effect on communities here in Tasmania. And as well, this is something I had to learn as a foreigner. On the Australian mainland, they would consider Tasmanians almost like second-class Australians. They would use a phrase, bogan, which I'd never heard before. It's very much an Australian phrase, but the Tasmanians we spoke to talked about that, being made fun of, being mocked, being underestimated. They would tell it as a joke, but then over time admit that growing up without pride, without confidence, was really difficult, and they had to get over it. And some people never did get over it. But when we drew out of them what made this place special, we found that they didn't say Tasmania so much as Tasmanian. They would add the N, they would make it an adjective, and no matter who they were, they had a very sophisticated understanding of what they meant by that word Tasmanian. She's really Tasmanian. That business is super Tasmanian, or that artist. And that isn't Tasmanian. That's so un-Tasmanian, it's crazy. And as soon as we heard them do that, we would jump on them and say, what do you mean by that? Give us an example. The way they talk about wine is really interesting in Tasmania. They wouldn't boast about anything. They wouldn't say it's world class. They would say 40 or 50 years ago, they said we couldn't have a wine industry in Tasmania. It would be too cold. The grapes would have to work too hard. We would have to work too hard. On the mainland of Australia, it's easy. But we did work hard, and that hard work produced something really special. And Tasmanians themselves, they don't boast that the Bordeaux and Champagne houses will sometimes get beaten out by Tasmanian wine. What they'll do instead is just point to it and say, isn't that a nice thing they said about us? As well with communities as well, Derby is a town that was a mining town, turned into a ghost town, ravaged by a flood. But a few people in the town noticed it was a great place to ride mountain bikes. And so the mountain bikers worked with the local council and the government and some volunteers and some investors to build a mountain bike track on the mountain. They thought maybe people would come here to do it. And they were told it's impossible. Don't do that. It's crazy. No one will ever come to Derby, which is really isolated in an already isolated place, Tasmania. But they knew if it was a really special mountain bike track, people would come. It couldn't be mediocre. And that's what they did. And today Derby is called one of the best places to ride in the world. Not by Tasmanians, but by others who come. Lots of farmers we spoke to talked about the move from commodity into specialty, organic, biodynamic, value-added agriculture, and how it maybe is not making them as much money, but it's bringing so much more meaning to their lives. And tech companies as well. We're told you have to be in Melbourne or Sydney, if not Paris or New York or London, to have a tech business. But they actually found what was special about this place and used that in the way they created their business. And now they would say, without Tasmania, we never could have done it. And the Tasmanian Aboriginal community, who were told in the 1970s they didn't even exist, now to be renewing and reviving their culture and their language. This is a story we heard so much of from Tasmanians. And Tasmanians are absolutely sure they do not want to become a city like this. They don't want to follow the usual pattern of exponential growth in a city. What they want to focus on is what is small, special, and growing, and what can only happen here. And so what we've tried to use is storytelling, narrative, which exists in all of our minds and all of our brains. We're born with it. And what is the story? What is the pattern, the plot we hear again and again in Tasmania? It's the rags to riches plot, the Cinderella plot. Only in Tasmania, it's never about money. It's always about meaning. And so really, at its briefest and the smallest way we could tell this story, it's overcoming that adversity, owning that grit and determination and hard work and invention that comes in an isolated place, and having these special outcomes, whatever they might be. A generation ago, being quiet was not good. In a loud world, no one could hear us. But now quietness and stillness is an advantage. And the pursuit, that hard work, is something we can say, well, if you work hard here, you will achieve something special. The outcome is extraordinary, whatever that might be, whether it's art, business, a social venture, or the very Tasmanian decision to protect the environment. A place brand for us really is, the place, culture, an invitation to be a part of that culture, and then a unifying strategy beyond it. And that's why we're using the word Tasmanian, adding an N to it, and inviting people to be a part of it, to be Tasmanian. If you're already Tasmanian, you can be more Tasmanian. If you're not yet, maybe you'd like to be. One of our first clients was Tourism Tasmania. They heard and saw our story that we'd come up with, that Tasmanians had told us. We distilled it down. They said, that does sound like us. How can we use it? So we did 40 or 50 more interviews and distilled the story for them. And we're doing that with every sector now. And making sure that everyone knows who their audiences are. These are the exhausted city dwellers who just need a break, maybe for a weekend or a week or 2 weeks, hopefully longer. And then cultural dwellers and adventurers as well. Not adventurers in culture who want to look for a Taylor Swift concert, but something that feels like can only happen there and that they can share when they go back to dinner parties. What they did, Tourism Tasmania, with this story, I'm from Canada, and so I know when I think of Australia and the ads I saw as a kid, it was always kangaroos and beaches and bright sun and pop music. Instead, what Tasmania is doing is trying to get at really Tasmanian culture, sitting in a VW van in the pouring rain, looking out at the nut, we call it, and eating a scalloped pie and getting pastry all over yourself. If that attracts you, you should come to this place. And there's real boldness in this, and we love this storytelling. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to make everyone use this story to their advantage. Part of what we're doing is spreading the story, and then what we try to do is help them bring it to life in their own organization and help everyone communicate it and share it. What we're trying to do, when I use the word impossible, we use the acronym TWILS, Trade, Tourism, Workforce Attraction, Investment Attraction, Student Attraction, and then living here, the L. But really the L is about community action. How can we unify all of this? And we can only do it through partnership in a bottom-up way so that everyone we're working with understands not only how to tell their story powerfully, but how to tell the Tasmanian story to make an advantage of it. In a world where everything is so loud, our quietness has to work for us. And so, of course, we have a digital strategy behind it. And I encourage you to check out tasmanian.com.au, become a partner, and look in the back end at our toolkit. And we have to make sure when we're telling people the come live here story, that it's just as powerful and just as united as the student story or the investment story. And we've been trying to do that using the stories of individual Tasmanians to make sure that people over time understand there's something special, there's something different there. That's the storytelling part, and we want to use our partners as our ambassadors. As well, that small, special, and growing quality I told you about is wrapped by something really interesting. 100 years of hard work, sacrifice, and invention that led to 100% self-sufficiency in renewable electricity. How can we now use this in a world that's looking for it to take everything Tasmanian and make it special, not only carbon neutral or zeroed out with carbon, but even positive? When you invest in Tasmania, you're helping the environment. You're removing and sequestering carbon from the environment. When we think about our workforce attraction and talent attraction audiences, we tried to get down to who really succeeds here. The ambitious introverts who love nature, they're sort of the deep Tasmanians, whether they know it or not. So we have to find them where they live and invite them. Let's say doctors want to come here. Rather than just do a regular ad, we can tell the story about 66% of their life, culture, and lifestyle. The job is the job. What can only happen here in Tasmania? So we're narrowing that down as much as we can and finding these places where they are. If they're already mountain bikers, let's talk to them about mountain biking. And when we talked to Tasmanians, they told us in the community their number one anxiety was about young people finishing high school and about literacy, about pride and confidence. So we want to take this climate positive story and this small, special, and growing story and bring it into the school system so every young person understands how to launch an enterprise in that Tasmanian way. They understand the principles of entrepreneurship. And so we're working with the education department on that. We really encourage you to sign up as partners and explore what we're doing. We'd love for you to be our partners as well. And we want to show you a short video at the very end after I thank you for this time and for this invitation that really tells the Tasmanian story in 2 minutes. Thanks again.
I'm sure you can now see why it was better for Todd to tell you all about storytelling and about the Tasmanian brand than it was by me. At the Van Diemen Project, we care about how to make opportunities matter, how do people start new ideas to scale, to sustain, to make regional Tasmania their home, but also the home for them to be inspired to develop brand new ideas. It's what we do every single day here in Launceston, but we do that all across our fantastic state. And so for you to hear some of the stories, some of the things that are happening in our regional community, we're going to have Nicole Lucas, my fellow entrepreneurship facilitator, who's going to run through a bit of a panel conversation with some innovators and entrepreneurs that we've picked out that have been inspired by, and their connection to regional communities has probably enhanced their ideas. And so while we're looking at a regional Tasmanian perspective, I am certain that this conversation is happening all across regional Australia. No longer do you need to live in a big city to make that great idea work. In fact, you can quietly pursue the extraordinary no matter where you are, and Tasmania is a great place to do that. And so, over to you, Nicole.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks, Todd. And thanks and welcome to everyone who's tuning in from across Australia. My name is Nicole and I'm an entrepreneurship facilitator with the Van Diemen Project. I'm lucky enough to be joined today by three of our amazing innovators from Tasmania who are all excited to share their stories of the quiet pursuit of the extraordinary. Please say a warm welcome to Marshall, Mon and Tank.
Hey.
Hi. Marshall, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business?
Sure. Hi, I'm Marshall Clarkson. I'm 18 and I've just started my business, Clarkson Joinery. So my business specialises in Tasmanian timber and resin furniture, such as dining tables, coffee tables, and more recently serving boards and smaller crafts. Yeah.
And I can attest to how beautiful they are because there was a lot of envy in the office when you brought them in.
Thank you.
So one thing that stands out about you, Marshall, is you actually grew up on Flinders Island. So for people joining us from Australia, they may not know much about Flinders Island. Can you just give us a quick overview about Flinders Island and how that helped you with your journey of innovation?
Sure. So Flinders Island's on the northeast coast of Tassie, has a very small residence of less than 1,000 people. I grew up there all my life and moved after year 10 to complete college in the mainland Tassie. It's a very close-knit community on Flinders. Everybody knows everybody, but there are great resources on the island for people similar to myself.
So did you tap into those resources that you had on the island?
I did. The school on Flinders got in contact with a few organisations such as the $20 Boss program, which I participated in, and the Next Gen Challenge that I also participated in. More locally on the island, there's a community shed, and I joined that to enhance my skill of woodworking and learn from the past generations.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I imagine there would be a lot of fun and interesting times had at the shed while you're learning. Yeah. So how did you find the transition from Flinders Island to what we might refer to as the mainland Tasmania?
It was certainly a big change for me because I moved alone, so my family is still on Flinders. I moved into a residence where my older brother used to be before he moved on to mainland Australia.
Yeah.
Certainly has big challenges, but I was lucky enough to choose some courses at Newstead College that reminded me of home, such as woodwork, to ease myself into living so far away. Yeah.
So you're now you're doing year 12 as well as running your own business.
Yes.
And you're going into uni soon.
Yeah.
So you've got a little bit going on.
Yeah, so I'm right at the end of year 12, just a couple of weeks left. And then next year I've been accepted into the Launceston campus for a Bachelor of Architecture and Built Environments.
Oh, they're lucky to have you, Marshall. So what sort of impact does that have on your business when you're trying to juggle all of that? And how do you keep the motivation going and look to sort of continue to be such an amazing innovator?
Well, to me it'll be a positive experience going to uni and running my business because many of the principles will go hand in hand. So architecture and built environments obviously is built around design, and my business is heavily built around unique designs for my pieces of furniture. And I'm looking forward to coming in contact with people who I can learn from and gain new resources to improve my business. And I believe I'll have more time on my hands to handle business than I do currently in year 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mon.
Hi.
Hi. Tell us a bit about you and your business.
Sure. So my name's Monique. Everyone knows me as Mon, and I've just started a fairly new business called Calm Minds, Healthy Bodies, and I'm in the wellbeing space. So I'm really, really passionate about teaching people easy tools to manage stress and just help their overall well-being. And I'm really passionate about prevention over cure. So I wear many hats in this space. I focus on mind, body and breath aspects of the wellbeing. So I'm a kids yoga teacher, I'm a health coach, I take Pilates and mindfulness, and really passionate about teaching today's youth as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So one thing that people think is that some regional communities are actually quite isolating, but it sounds like you found quite the opposite. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and your experiences?
Yeah, sure. For me, I've had lots of support, lots of community support. Word of mouth has been huge for me, so I haven't found it isolating here at all. And I guess an example of that is, I've worked with Bridge North Women's Football Club.
Yep.
In that mindfulness space, and I'm also currently in talks with an organisation where I'll be working with North and South, and so we'll meet at Campbelltown and do some work there, and who knows, potentially from there it could get me doing some more work down south. And
that's fantastic.
So, quite the opposite.
Yeah, great to hear. And so that community support that you mentioned, how important has that been for you in starting up your business and growing your business?
Absolutely pivotal. Like it's inspired me to keep going. You tend to have imposter syndrome sometimes when you start these things out, and the fact that I've had so much support means that my work is needed, and so it just makes me more determined to keep going.
Excellent, just what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Hi Tank.
How you going?
Great. So tell us a little bit about your business, how it came about and where it's at now.
All right, so I came from Queensland 3 years ago. I've come up with an idea to pretty much start a cultural centre based around our bush tucker. It's called Mara Militina, which is one country. And it is based around our bush tucker where you'll be able to walk through the food, the plants, look at all the food, then go into the kitchen, cook with it, and contemporary style. So we're going to cook contemporary foods with our bush tucker. Then the project will lead into having a gallery and a shop for everyone to sell their arts and crafts, but also moving into camping on there so that we can have groups come into camp, as well as so tourists can come in, camp for a couple of days and get immersed in our culture. So what I noticed that if I can start that safe place, it can help with our reconciliation.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, if you asked me what was special and unique about Tasmania, I would probably give a different answer than Mon, from Marshall and from yourself.
Yeah.
What is it that is special about Tasmania to you, and how does that help your business?
Obviously, being Tasmanian Aboriginal, I'm a Parabena man from Cape Portland, Manalagana man, through Watermoyniana and Dalrymple. So that's a big connection for me, being on country again. Then I have a lot of family that I'm connecting with now. I'm finding that my family has just grown massively. Uncles, aunties, cousins, half cousins.
Yep.
So the family is getting quite big.
So what values underpin your business, and how does having your own business and being an innovator in this space allow you to show those values more broadly?
Well, obviously being Aboriginal, that's my culture. I live my culture every day. I'm always working with bush tucker, always trying to find out more about my culture. I'll never ever know everything about my culture. So underpinning my whole culture is what my business is about. So I live as an Aboriginal person, and my business will actually portray that as who I am, where I'm from, and why we need this whole business for everyone to share in.
Thank you.
No problem.
So there you have it. 3 examples of individual stories on their pursuit of the extraordinary. I just want to ask a few more questions, and I'm sort of just going to ask the questions now as a bit of a panel discussion. So please feel free to interject with whatever your experiences have been. So think for a minute about what you think that you can achieve within your business, And just tell me a little bit more about how you think Tasmania and being in Tasmania, being a Tasmanian, can help you to achieve that in your business. Mon, do you want to kick us off?
I think community is really, really big for me. And as I said earlier, I think because we're a little island, word of mouth is amazing when it comes to community. And yeah, people really want to support each other. So that's big for me.
Yeah. Marshall, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, hopefully in the future my business can grow as large as I plan on it. In Tassie, there's more than enough opportunity in Tassie for me to continue to grow, especially with the available timbers that I can find just around the state. It's just as likely to succeed in Tassie as the mainland.
I'd argue more so because I think we're quite lucky in terms of the beautiful timbers that you have access to.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The timbers such as Huon Pine and Blackheart Sassafras that are local to Tassie are, in my opinion, better timbers
Yeah.
than the mainland.
And completely Tasmanian.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think mine can just only grow.
Yeah.
Being a Aboriginal in Tasmania and having the opportunity to start pretty much a cultural centre can only benefit all Aboriginal people here, all community, all tourists that will come and have that safe space to come to. So I think that being in Tasmania, for me, and being a Tasmanian Aboriginals, my opportunities are endless. I've just got to find the right avenue and the right people to help me get that started. Yeah.
And how have your families and those close to you responded to you starting out in something that's sort of new and innovative?
Me? I've been doing this for a while, and my first business case has been brought back down 3 times now because my first business case was quite huge.
Yep.
And I have a wife that literally brings me back down all the time and says, well, we're going too big, we need to come back down a little bit smaller.
Yep.
So I think that's where I'm from. I literally have to come back down a little bit and start from the bottom a little bit rather than trying to start at the top like I do sometimes.
Yep.
But yeah.
And what about in your immediate communities? Have you found that as you're starting out with this sort of new and innovative journey that you're getting the support that you need from your families and friends?
Yeah, mine are really supportive, which is great. I think at first though, some people aren't aware of the need for this space. And like I think I mentioned earlier that I'm big on prevention. And so sometimes people wait until they're sick or stressed or burnt out to look for my kind of work. But yeah, prevention is huge. So yeah, they're starting to realise now. Yeah, I don't think they fully understood at first a lot of what I did, but now that word of mouth and I'm getting work out there, yeah, I'm getting more and more support, definitely.
Excellent.
I'll just add to that because part of an issue with our youth is a lot of mental health, and there's a lot of elders and there's a lot of Aboriginal people that are realising that unless you actually are involved with your culture, you feel lost, and it took me 10 years to find my culture, and once I did find my culture and knew who I was, my life started to change. And that is why I'm trying to start this business, and that's why I do work in mental health and a social worker, as in, if I can get those kids involved with their culture, I know personally it will help them with their mental health as well. And I think that's a big part of mental health, is knowing who you are and where you're from. Yeah.
What about you? Because you've got family still on Flinders, you've probably got some over here. How are they supportive of you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I've got family all around the place. So my immediate family is still on Flinders, but I have uncles and aunties around the States. So they've obviously been really supportive, but a really large base of support for me was the community from Flinders. So whenever I need advice, I can just look back to the former Masters of the Trade on Flinders, and they always offer advice. And whilst we're on the topic of mental health, Community Sheds, which is where I learnt my skill, they're also a great advocate of mental health, and they provide some meaning for the older generation as they sometimes struggle to relate to community. So it gives them a source of involvement.
That's awesome.
So they've been massive support for me, and they always give me advice when needed.
They're
Yeah.
a pretty special place, aren't they? I've spent a bit of time in them as well, and always walk away feeling a lot lighter and very thankful, I think, for that experience.
A place to learn, and then another way is just to talk about just anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, the knowledge that our old people have is
Yeah.
immense, and I think that's the thing, is getting the youth to actually sit down with them and listen. Yeah.
Great segue, actually, because my next question is around being able to tap into support and encouragement and access not just business advice, but role models and mentors within Tasmania. So obviously you're all treading paths that haven't really been trodden before in this way. You're all doing it in your own unique and special way. So what does that look like in terms of being able to access that network of support and role models?
For me, I have found the Van Diemen Project huge. Like, I wouldn't be where I am without the support from them. Just so much that I didn't know I had to do in terms of, I just thought I could float around word of mouth. And
Yep.
and so, I've found Adam huge for mentor. You need a mentor. Yeah, you definitely. I've needed a mentor. And I actually didn't originally know they were out there. So, definitely having a business mentor and guidance is very supportive and very important.
Why do you think it's so important to have a mentor?
To keep you on track as well, and make sure that you are going down the right track. Before I started working with Adam, I probably have wasted 2 years doing stuff when I could have been getting that work out there, because it's just stuff I didn't know. And so he can guide me and point me in the right direction of what's important, what I need to do now. Because I did waste a lot of time initially before I had support.
What about your experience, Marshall, with mentors and supports?
I can definitely second that for the Van Diemen Project. I first come in contact with them through a school trip from Flinders, must have been 4 years ago, where I met Adam, and then since moved over, I got in contact through Newstead, and I always had my idea then for my business, and I arranged a meeting, and then as far as the actual task of making products, I was fairly aware of what I needed to do, but the task of launching a business, I had no idea. So when I went there, I got the stepping stones and what I needed to do each time. Every time I walked away, I had a plan and a point of direction to actually keep moving forward rather than just spinning wheels.
Yeah.
So you've actually got quite an interesting space as well, Marshall, because I remember the first time that I met you and you were experimenting with the resin pouring then. How did you learn that? Because we're seeing a lot more of it on social media, but I don't think I'd ever actually seen it in person. So how did you tap into those skills within Tasmania?
Well, as far as the resin goes, it really was just trial and error. So I've done plenty of work with just raw timber, but as far as resin, I hadn't had the chance to, but I was lucky enough to be shown a massive sale on a timber store, and I went down there and I was like, oh, I'll give it a go. So I bought some and I just went for it and tried, and obviously there's lots of resources online for how to do it, but I understood the basics of how to do it and the concepts and what you needed to do it right, and I just tried and continued to learn. I like learning new skills, so I spent a lot of time just researching it before, because it is quite an expensive adventure to launch into. So I did my research first and then just trial and error, and I was lucky enough to sell items along the way to further my ability to keep learning.
Excellent. So, Tank, I'll direct this one to you because we haven't heard from you for a little bit. What's been the most important thing, the one thing that's really stood out for you in terms of your developmental journey for your business?
I've had a lot of mentors and role models. In Queensland was where I started, and I did have a lot of mentors and role models there. And in coming to Tasmania, my role models would be Arnie Patsy, Dave Warner. You know, these are guys that are out in a community making a difference and making a big difference with what they do in community. Yeah.
Part of the joy of going live is the not so quiet pursuit of the extraordinary that's going on. So if you had one word that you could describe your journey so far as an entrepreneur in Tasmania, what would it be?
I'll start. I'll start. Challenging.
Yeah.
Challenging.
Yes, it has been a little bit challenging.
Yep.
Yeah, because of what I'm actually trying to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. What about you, Mo?
I'd probably have to agree with that as well, because when I first started, I don't think people understood a lot of the work and the modalities that I do, and they didn't understand how it affected your health or how it could help prevent anxiety attacks, or and so it wasn't really understood. So I think people might have thought, oh, is there really a need for this?
Yeah.
And people's perceptions of things, and I know myself, like for example, I used to think, I'm really embarrassed now, but I used to think yoga was for barefoot woo hippies, you know. I didn't understand it, but I didn't take the time to understand it either. I judged it. Whereas when I went through a trauma, a friend of mine took me along to yoga, and I experienced it. And I realised that I didn't have to be skinny and flexible and bend my head, you know, and it was not just about the movement, it was what it did for my mental health as well.
Yep.
And then you can do it once, and when you do it regularly, the benefits you'll reap from week to week. And so when I started doing that, I'm like, why isn't this in schools to help kids with mobility and circulation and adrenaline and feeling good and mental health? And so it's lack of understanding, I think, of what it is we do, and there's that resistance there, and you know,
Marshall, one word.
For me, it would have to be rewarding. Like,
Oh, good word. Yeah.
It certainly is challenging, but at the end, it is certainly rewarding. Which is why I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
Why we're all still doing it.
What? Where does the point of rewarding come in for you?
Delivering the product to the client's always really rewarding, seeing their reaction. There's lots of rewarding stages for what I do. Buying the timber and actually machining it, and you can see the true character of it, that's really rewarding. And finishing the piece, there's many rewarding stages that I find anyway.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
There should have been 2 words.
Fair call.
Yeah.
We'll allow it just this one.
Yeah.
Well, this one's got 2. You'll be
Yes.
happy to know. So I might start up this end. And Marshall, 2 pieces of advice that you would give to someone who's living in Tasmania or a regional area at the moment, who's got an idea for something that's innovative, a little bit out there. What 2 pieces of advice would you give to them?
You're just going to
Oh, watch the banner.
sound a little cliche, but obviously believe in yourself, your own abilities, and don't be afraid to try your idea. And the second piece of advice would certainly be seek advice. I cannot stress that enough, how much you can learn from other people, and there's no shame in learning from others and not doing it entirely yourself.
Good advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think 100% you need to believe in yourself. Don't let other perceptions or opinions, you know, if you've got that passion, and I walk my talk, and what I do is from life experience as well. So definitely 100% believe in yourself, and definitely get mentorship. It has been a game changer for me. I could have been out there and serving so many more people now in this space probably 3 years ago if I knew that support was out there. And again, the imposter syndrome thing, sort of you hold yourself back a little bit. So definitely put yourself out there, get the support.
Great advice. Tank.
I would say go for it. And believe in your dreams. Everything starts with a dream. Mine was a dream. Guessing yours were a dream. So if you have that dream, it will come true if you just follow it. Just stick to your beliefs, stick to who you are, don't waver from that. I have been told by people to do different things, and I'm like, no, I'm going to stay to who I am and stick to who I am and do it the way I want to do it. It might take a little bit longer, But if you follow that dream and you stick to it, it'll be more rewarding at the end because you've done it your way and you haven't compromised anything to get to it. Yeah. Stick with your values, stick with your morals and do it the way you want to do it. And obviously, mentors are great. Adam and Chris have been great for me with the Van Diemen project as well. As I said, also all the community support that I get, even from non-Aboriginal people. It's great. So
I'm just about to throw back to Adam, but you have all of Australia listening. Is there anything else that you want to add to any of the conversation that we've had today?
Yeah, come to Tasmania. It's great.
Didn't even plan it.
No.
I don't think that anyone else could have wrapped up the level of innovation that we have here within Tasmania better than the three people that I've been lucky enough to talk with today. Australia, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to throw back over to Adam. Enjoy your day.
Wow, thank you so much to everyone who has been part of this conversation. Thank you, Nicole, for facilitating that. And it's so great to hear all of your inputs, your perspectives on how you quietly pursue the extraordinary. And as I said at the start, it's not just about how this is happening in regional Tasmania. We're so proud of what is happening in our state and we're so glad through Spark Festival you can all be part of it. But on the flip side of it as well, I know that this is happening all across regional Australia. And so if you love what you're hearing, the quiet pursuit of the extraordinary, you go, I want to be part of that. I know once our borders open and everything else happens in that regard, I'm sure that Tasmania would welcome you all with open arms. So thank you so much for joining our session. I hope that inspires you, that encourages you, that demystifies some of the great things that are happening in our regional communities. Thank you so much for joining us from my perspective as the Van Diemen Project, for everyone for being involved, and thanks to you for watching, and we can't wait to see what else you get out of Spark Festival.